anyone else can see, or this is just driven to that over?
We had some difficulties with the copier yesterday evening, and the secretariat is trying to sort that out. My apologies that the copies were not made available for everyone at this time.
Let us know so we know what's going on.
Yes. I was reading from paragraph 4 it is. Suddenly the crowd of demonstrators was charged from in front of the gang of young men led by members of the House of Israel, who carried staves, cutlasses, and bayonet-looking knives. They attacked the crowd. They scattered in all directions, some running back down Brigham, others into the house opposite the police station. Mike James was attacked by 3 men and received a blow on the head that stunned him. From the other side of the road, Father Dart started to take photographs of the attack on Mike. 3 of the gang started towards Father Dart. He saw them coming and started to run, but was encumbered by his cameras strung around his neck. After a few yards, he tripped and fell. They started to beat him with staves, and as he fell on the grass verge, they continued to beat him. One of them took his camera and started beating him with it. Then one of them drew an old bayonet from his waistband and stabbed him in the back. The plainclothes policemen fired 2 shots in the air to scatter the assailants and then effected an arrest. Now, I refer to this passage, Mr. Hamilton, and I will seek your opinions because your evidence yesterday was I had a full view of the scene. If you had a full view of the scene, Mr. Hamilton, and you said you were approximately the same distance you are away from me today, this eyewitness account that I have read, did you see what this gentleman said he saw?
Mr. Chairman, before he answers that question, he's already answered the question, did you observe Mike James being beaten? And his answer was not that I can recall. He has no place here, regardless of what the rules of evidence is in this tribunal, to give opinion evidence. He's not an expert, and he was not, if he says that he did not recall or he did not see, regardless of what my friend reads in the record, he doesn't give opinion.
Don't make too much of the use of the word opinion there. I think it's a little out of place, but don't make too much of it. Is your recall of the scene of that day consistent with this? I think that is because.
Well, then let her ask that question as opposed to opinion, asking for an opinion.
Mr. Hamilton, the question to you is, would you agree with this eyewitness account?
As you said, reading this review of quality eyewitness recently, he's speaking about cameras. So I would want to surmise the possibility could have been left the precinct with a camera, if you recall that we saying that. So all the thing what the eyewitness is saying might be factual, might be possible. But I'm saying at the time I was in the precinct, this is what I saw.
I'm telling you how come so where we're headed because 10 men see the same event and each take the same from a different angle. You have a classic case of an accident. One person is a seamstress, the other is a mechanic. The mechanic was only concerned about the injury done to the vehicle. He did not even see people in their vehicle. The seamstress was concerned with the extent to which the dresses were damaged with blood and other things. And she couldn't even say the nature of the injury. So, don't make too much of it.
I'm guided, Mr. Chairman. I will move on at this time. Count Mr. Hamilton, on the day in question, is there anything else you did on that day that you wish to share with the members of the commission?
I said, when we got back to the hospital headquarters, reports of all sorts were coming in and going out and flying around the city. First, that Father Dark was stabbed. Secondly, he was transported. He was rushed to Georgetown Public Hospital. Thirdly, he was removed from the Georgetown Public Hospital and taken to the St. Joseph Mercy Hospital.
That's an evidence already, Mr. Hamilton.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you did on that day? And then we can move on.
Well, in the discourse and discussion, of course there were concerns at the level of the leadership of the hospital in discussions that the events, the subsequent death of Father Dark, might have taken the political situation into a new realm, so to speak. And there were reports received by our sources in the police force that suggest that we didn't verify that members of the WPA might have converged, might have overrun the hospital's headquarters. And therefore, the leadership, I recall the leader attempting to make contact with Mr. Green. I think he was unsuccessful. And subsequently made contact with Mr. Robert Williams, who was at that time, I think, the PNC district chairman of Georgetown. Our concern was that, based on the reports you were getting, that we needed to protect our headquarters. And so a request was made for weapons to protect the headquarters of Government City. We subsequently, myself and Albert, we were asked to go to a building in Smythe Street. Smythe Street, S-M-Y-T-H. That's somewhere opposite the centralized school there. The PNC still have a building there that was a district headquarters. And we went there, and as I indicated in my statement, that day we collected from Mr. Williams, Robert Williams, not Pastor Williams, 4.38 service revolvers, as they call them. That is, I think, it was police still, I think they used to call it or something like that. And that was specific to members, brothers, protecting the headquarters of the hospital.
Mr. Hamilton, did you ever receive any training in relation to how to use these weapons?
You know, spiritual members depended on, in my statement I mentioned that there were people of all strata in the hospital. There were persons who were members of the disciplined forces.
Chair, if council can be assisted by asking you, Mr. Not just answer the questions. Did you receive any training to use a firearm? So all this talk about the different levels and all this is not an answer to the question. The witness needs to answer the question. Did you receive training to use these things? Yes or no?
The answer is yes.
Who did you receive the training from?
As I was about to say, for council secretary.
Say no.
My statement, it contained my statement. There were persons from all segments of society who were members of the hospital. At that time, you had men who were serving members of the Ghanaian Defense Force. You had persons who were serving members of the that police post. And you had ex-servicemen, ex-policemen who were considered. And so we depended on those persons who had the necessary experience to facilitate the training of persons who never had such experience.
Mr. Hamilton, did yourself or members of the House of Israel receive any training in relation to bomb making techniques?
I recall, as I said in my statement, sometime in, I think 1979, 2 bombs were planted at the House of Israel headquarters. One exploded, the other one did not. The House of Israel's interpretation was,
So Ken Chair, it is not an answer to the question. This witness is being asked direct questions and is giving answers that he wishes to give.
Well, you can tell them to get up and you're trying to come with questions and you're trying to get it back to the answers that you may have wanted to give. But no, you can't direct the witness.
Chair, I'm not trying to direct him. Chair, I'm only intervening because it just represents a waste of our time if he gives answers that are not to the questions put. I mean, your answer.
Okay, if I think you would visit that, I will so indicate to it, but I don't think that will be that point. So let's continue to conduct ourselves to be doing it efficiently.
the answer to that question is yes.
And who did you receive that training from? Under the members of the House of Israel?
As I said in my statement, let me find the paragraph and I will read what it said.
The paragraph, Mr. Hamilton, is paragraph 10 in your statement. And the name mentioned is?
Yes, I said after I spoke about guns, 10 years, I can confirm also that there was a period when some members of the leadership of the House of Israel were trained in bomb-making techniques by an army officer, Wycliffe McAllister. To be fair to Mr. McAllister and the army, I could not say whether his interaction with the House of Israel was at the instance of the government/army or his brother, who was the second deputy to Robert Washington at the time. The training commenced soon after 2 bombs were planted and exploded at the House of Israel headquarters in 149 Lebanon Street.
Now, Mr. Hamilton, you spoke earlier about a connection between the House of Israel and the YSN. Was there any other connection the House of Israel shared with any political party at that time?
The only relationship that the House of Israel had with a political party would have been with the People's National Congress.
And who from that party would you have had knowledge of was in contact with the House of Israel?
You mean in addition to Mr. Williams who you mentioned before?
Mr. Williams.
And the other 2 persons who you mentioned before?
Correct.
In addition to those?
In addition to
Williams,
those.
Green and Gordon. Thank you.
You would have noted that I already spoke to relationship with Mr. Hamilton Green. I already spoke to relationship with Mr. Robert Gordon and Mr. Robert Williams. In my statement, I spoke to a relationship with a gentleman by the name of Emerson Simon, who functioned out of the Ministry of National Development and Mobilization. My information was at the time he was either a police officer or an ex-police officer.
Mr. Hamilton, you spoke about...
You want to explore that relationship more fully?
Yes.
I think it's important.
Yes. You spoke about this relationship between Emerson Simon and the leadership of the House of Israel. Could you explain at this time what was the nature of that relationship?
Yesterday, there were different type of activities. The House of Israel, you were asked to support PNC type activities. In the case of Mr. Simon, who functioned at the Ministry of National Development and Mobilization, I think that's what the ministry was called. At that time, you had whereby any government function, all the government at least try to ensure that all organizations, whether trade union, whatever, participated in those activities, rallies, May marches, whatever. And Mr. Simon, in that respect, would have been the one who would make contact with the House of Israel. There were activities outside of Georgetown. I recall us going to Linden during the bauxite strike they had here. That was one relationship. There was, as I said, there was a relationship with the YSM you mentioned. We had no relationship.
I'm sorry, before you move on, what's this Linden strike and the relationship with Emma?
That was the bauxite strike in Linden, and therefore we were asked, or shuttled to Linden, to support the activities of PNC in Linden.
Thank you.
Support in what way? What activities exactly?
Demonstrate, picket on behalf of the government, because there was another position with the strikers. So it was to show that the government still had support of the citizens at that time.
But that support was on strike breakers, the breaking strike.
No, not in the case of not in the case of the bauxite strike. In the case of the bauxite strike, it was just a support. But there were activities if they wanted to.
But was it supportive of the strike? The House of Israel position was supportive of the strike, or opposed to the strike?
No, we were supporting the government.
Yeah, but what was the government?
Who opposed the strike.
Opposed the strike?
The government had a difficulty with the strike.
We gave it the same strike breaker too.
No, we didn't.
All right.
We want to shut up the Linden to break this strike.
I believe Council, you had mentioned that not in the case of the strike, but so I assume that Council Commission will at some point ask you about other strikes,
Yes.
because I really don't want
That
to
is in my statement.
interrupt her.
Yes, as I said, the relationship with the
Before we move on, Ms. Towns, and I believe Madam Commissioner is right, you did mention there were other activities and other strikes. What were the other activities that you as a member of the House of Israel were engaged in at these other strikes?
There were two strikes that we were very much involved in the activities, strike breaking. There was a long strike by the Gabu Union in Sugar. We participated in activities, cane harvesting, cane cutting, whatever style, in support of the government at the time, for several months. I would remember also that public servants, by the hundreds and thousands also, were coerced to participate in that activity when there was a show strike.
Methods of coercion were used. What methods of coercion were used?
People complain about being threatened, losing their jobs, and so they acquiesced to participate in the cane cutting exercise. That was a national thing for several months. It's nothing new, I'm speaking to. That's a public record.
What sort of threats?
I'm saying that people
Threat to
complain.
lose your job?
Yes.
That's the only nature of the threats
Yes,
that were...
as I remember people complaining.
I believe you were speaking there about threats to public servants, but
Yes.
earlier you had said that the House of Israel participated.
Yes, voluntarily. The House of Israel participation was voluntarily in support of the government.
Which was to cut cane.
Yes,
Thank you.
for several months I recall, and there was another strike that was the dinosaur strike. Radio House of Israel was involved in that activity.
And what activities would you have done during the
The
dinosaur
dinosaur
strike?
strike, as I remember, Mr. Hamilton Green was the, I want the word that he used at the time, was the commander of that activity. And if you go back into the record, the archive, you see the photographs of him and Rabbi Washington and other members conferring in the precinct of dinosaurs. So also Israel members were asked to take over positions in the dinosaurs, different departments, so that they store, because it was CCW called the strike, and workers were, in some instances, some workers, even though they were on strike, they were still in the premises, and therefore we use threats and they to get them out of there. Nobody, I recall, was assaulted, but people left the premises, and so members of Israel function in different capacities. At that strike also, you had involved and coordinated were members of the YSM Code that I spoke. And many of Israel members stayed employed dinosaurs for several months a year. So those two activities of strike-breaking nature, I like to recall. They were public matters for several weeks now.
Thank you, ma'am.
In your
One more thing. The coercion came from which quarter? From the House of Israel alone?
The coercion at dinosaurs?
No, when they talk about the sugar workers and the public servants being coerced.
No, the coercion was government coercion. It was not the government. The government did not interact with public servants except in the field. The interaction based on the information from public servants were done by government officials to have them vote against.
And you know that from your own knowledge.
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton, you indicated in your statement at paragraph 30 that of all the meetings all the meetings were political in nature and had to do with the House of Israel utilizing its manpower. Could you indicate approximately how many members did you have in the House of Israel in the late 70s?
I would say, as I said in the statement, about 1,500, 2,000 persons across the country.
And during the sugar workers' strikes, for example, how many members of the House of Israel were utilized to go and cut the cake?
Several hundred.
Now, Mr. Hamilton, from being involved in activities in relation to the strikes and the rallies, these instructions were received from the leader of the House of Israel upon request from, you said, Mr. Hamilton Green, and there were requests from Emerson Simon. Could you indicate what the House of Israel got in return for doing these requests which were made?
I suspect on local, they were, their assumption, I mentioned yesterday, the lease of the government was probably property for agricultural development in Blue River, mentioned. and that project had started. I mentioned yesterday, we established a factory in the Western Belt area on the front road that would be considered a mini industrial estate, and we were given possession of a building where we established the factory that was sold through plans by the government. For more clarity, was what they call the apiary building. I think earlier they did polish stones there, colored stones. So, and thirdly, I recall the patch of land in Festival City, North Carolina. I think now they call it the Army Officers Scheme, that old patch of land in that four corner there. And the hospital had it in their possession for several years, right up to early 90s. They had the property in possession.
Mr. Hamilton, during the WPA rallies, which are,
I'm so sorry to do this, but the witness has spoken to leases and your possession of buildings and so on. Was this formal business arrangement? Are you aware of any agreement signed, any rentals paid, or monies paid in exchange?
No, ma'am. Requests were made in possession of the property buildings. But in the case of the island, because of the procedural lands and surveys, you would have had to go through the process where a lease was issued.
But no money paid in exchange?
No transfer of funds.
But at that time, from your point of view, a contribution was being made to the economy in the sense that you were producing both agricultural and other items.
Yes, ma'am.
That is how you were treated. How old were you then?
Say that?
How old were you then?
1977, I was 23.
So you were a young man.
Say that again?
You were a young man then.
Yes, very young.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hamilton, at this point in time, I would wish to refer you to the paragraph 14 of your statement, where you indicated that the PNC person with whom Rodney Washington developed the strongest relationship and closest relationship was that of Hamilton Green. Could you at this time, Mr. Hamilton, indicate or give us a brief overview of how you view the relationship between the PNC and the House of Israel?
Relationship, as I said, was very PNC depended on the House of Israel to participate in the activities I outlined. And that was for several years, even several from 78 right on, even beyond 80. Because some of the things I might speak would have overlapped beyond the period you were considered the commission was concerned. And so that was a consistent relationship. Right up, I would say, up until 1985, when Mr. Gordon died. The circumstances of the relationship changed dramatically after Mr. Gordon died.
For the record, you tell us, during that period, who was Mr. Hamilton Green in relation to the president? What sort of relationship they had?
At the time, Hamilton Green would have been a minister of the government. He might have served during that period as a vice president because I think they allowed for, but I know he was a minister, as I mentioned, 79, I wanted to believe he was Minister of Agriculture at that time, or during the same period we were speaking about. I'll say might have been during the period, Minister of Housing, because the land I spoke to, or about, in Festival City area, that land was given to the House of Israel by Mr. Hamilton, because it was under the control of the ministry that he controlled at the time, so it wouldn't be the ministry of housing.
And did he have, Mr. Hamilton Green, did he have any position in the ruling party?
Yes, he was a senior functionary in the PNC's party. Some people, senior functionary, some people in the PNC support based on the PNC. Even though they will recognize him, I suspect, as the deputy leader of the PNC, even though that was not decided. Because I'm speaking because of where he was placed and how he was.
Mr. Hamilton, you spoke earlier in your evidence yesterday about the disruptions of the WPA meetings where there were actual physical violence that was used, beating with sticks and beating with batons. Were any of the members of the House of Israel ever arrested for assaulting any of the members of the WPA?
I recall during the referendum, I think it was the day of the actual voting, the referendum, I recall a brother being arrested somewhere on what we have now, the Merriman's Mall. And the police was about to take him away. And it was in close proximity to the PNC's office they had on North Road. And which is in close proximity to where Mr. Hoyt lived, former president. I recall Mr. Hoyt intervening to have the police release the brother. So that's the only time I can recall an arrest where I was present of a member of the opposition, but the police subsequently released him.
The police subsequently released him. Based on your experiences, would you be inclined to agree with me that the members of the House of Israel were somewhat immune in relation to giving some sort of protection from the government of the day?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure how we can answer the question in the manner was that question framed.
But let him answer, he can't even say so. You're not to know what the witness can answer. Only he knows that he can answer.
Well, if he's providing evidence with respect to immunity, there better be a factual basis for that.
Okay, but I was permitted to answer. He may know much more than you do.
I would
First,
say,
Mr. Hamilton, this would be, do you believe at that time, as a member of the House of Israel, and witnessing a brother of yours who was arrested, and then someone intervened and he was released, do you believe that because of the connection with the government of the day, the members of the House of Israel and yourself was immune?
I suspect, yes, we felt that way.
Now, these guns that you spoke about, that were received,
You sure about someone that he was finished? I got the impression he was still developing his thoughts.
if you're not going to give me.
I was going to, the same question she's about to ask, I was going to make the point that having in your possession arms and ammunition regularly, and you felt no way threatened will arrest you for that if they even know you have, I suspect. We felt that way. Secondly, I would say, threatening and assaulting and beating citizens in full view of the police. They never arrested House of Israel member except for one time. I would suggest that the House of Israel felt that they had the protection of the government.
These guns and ammunition that you refer to are in your possession. Did you ever possess a permit or a license for carrying same?
I can't recall at all any member of the House of Israel who bore a firearm or had a license. Or the firearm that they carried.
The way you answer that, you say you can't recall, is it that you're saying that no one had a licensed firearm?
No one that I knew had a licensed firearm in the House of Israel at the time.
And in particularly yourself, you did not have a firearm license or permit to carry arms
For
around.
a period when I had in my possession 9mm Browning pistol, I had no firearm license to carry.
And you personally, Mr. Hamilton, did you have any fears of being arrested for being in possession of that unlicensed firearm?
No, not at all.
And why was it that you personally didn't feel any fear of being arrested for having that unlicensed firearm?
Because I believe that the House of Israel, we were protected by the government of the day. And so I never felt anyway threatened having a firearm.
Mr. Hamilton, you spoke at length both yesterday and today referring to where you would have received firearms from. Do you have any knowledge at this time of whether the Guyana Defense Force was supplying the House of Israel with any arms or ammunition?
No.
Are you familiar with the signatures of the leadership of the House of Israel?
I may be able to recall what some of the signatures look like.
At this time, members of the Commission is in possession of a document that formed part of the special branch files, which is already tendered and in evidence. And I would wish at this time to seek your leave to show this document, which is already in evidence, to Mr. Hamilton. I believe it is in file number 1, which is marked LJ/SB/ LJ/SB/WPA1, which was tendered and marked on the 28th of April 2014.
Never mind, will be refreshed by letting me have to say anything. Because as they recall, no copies were circulated.
Grateful, sir. Yes. It forms part of the special branch files, but it is.
So we see now, let's get into it.
What page is it? Can you hold it on the list?
The way this last thing, right?
There's a copy that is going around to councils as of our chiefs. For the councils at the bar table, I believe it might be the second document in the folder. The numbering on it is very, you can't really make it out, but it should be the second document. Mr. Hamilton, do you see recorded on the top of that document the Land Defense Force account 4?
Yes, sir.
Do you see listed there a quantity of G3 rifles?
Let's get the dates first.
Yes. Do you see the date on the document, sir? The 24th, the day of June 1979?
Yes, sir.
Do you see listed there the name McPherson?
Yes, sir.
And that would be Major.
Yes, sir.
And underneath the name McPherson, you see description of articles.
Yes, sir.
You see 19 G3 rifles.
Yes, sir.
And it says there in brackets serviceable.
Yes.
19 G3 bayonets.
Yes.
You also see there an order for 1,500 7.62 ammo.
Yes, sir.
1,500 rounds.
Yes,
The
sir.
Army would represent
Yes,
rounds
sir. Yes.
of 7.62 ammo.
Yes, sir.
You see 10 Browning pistols listed there.
Yes, sir.
And you see 509 mm long. That would be rounds again.
Yes, sir.
And what is their last item? You see total charge total, and there it is recorded there PNC.
Yes, sir.
And underneath there's a signature.
Yes.
Do you see House of Israel?
Yes, sir.
And then the signature?
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize that signature, sir, as being a member of the House of Israel?
No, I don't.
Do we have to? We don't have to.
No.
Mr. Chairman, and I know you may have wanted to ask it, but the question was conjunctive. There was two questions in one. The first question is whether he recognized the signature. If yes, it would have been when the signature was a House of Israel member signature. So maybe my friend may want to clarify the question simply for the record itself.
Mr. Hamilton, you do see the signature there next to the writing House of Israel.
Yes, sir.
But you do not recognize that signature.
No, I don't.
And of course, you don't claim to be able to recognize all the signatures of every member of the House of Israel.
No, I don't.
This would be the the first time you're seeing that document, Mr. Hamilton?
No.
And the first time you would have seen it would be when?
The first time I came to the commission, I think, in conversation with Mr. Anneman, he showed me several documents, including this document, several documents with members of the House with real names and so forth. So this was one of them. So the first time, this is the second time I've seen it.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
Did he say the second and
Mistake. The first time was when he came to the commission first. The document was shown.
What does this document that you were saying? Is it clear to you what this document is saying? So what did you say to the public experience?
My view of this document, Mr. Chairman, is that it represents an order of arms and ammunition which were taken from the Guyana Defense Force and handed over to the House of Israel at the request of the PNC, because it says there total chargeable to, and then it is recorded on the document itself, PNC. At least on the face of it, please, Mr. Chairman, that is what I'm seeing recorded on the document.
This appears to be the normal record keeping when a soldier is being issued arms and ammunition, because I'm seeing the printed word soldier lying around the foot bottom. They have chargeable to strike soldier PNC. Signature soldier to strike House of Israel with the signature.
Yes, sir.
Of course, Commission Council has been heard, hopefully we will have witnesses who are able to speak more directly to this at a later time.
Yes, please, Madam Commissioner, we do have a member of the GDF.
Thank you, let's get on again.
Now,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to understand that the GDF person will tell us what the documents about, and not the prosecutor, not the counsel, your counsel. I mean, I'm not getting in too much, but
I think that
because it's a problem for her to tell you as evidence what she thinks that happened there. So I'm happy if she's saying that she has some GDF person. So
that's
that's it.
precisely what she said.
Okay.
He showed the members of the GDF and they come.
And that's precisely, that's precisely why I sought to clarify that.
I mean, I'm impressed with the interpretation of minority has. See for myself, I can see that nothing like that written in the document. What do you do that?
again, council would appreciate, I was answering a direct question posed by Mr. Chair. Now, Mr. Hamilton, could you...
Not you will get is attended in what? Many officers of the Defense Force come in to be able to speak firmly or get in there.
They would be in a position, please,
Hopefully
Mr. Chair.
so. Right.
Now, Mr. Hamilton, did you at any point in time observe any of the members of the House of Israel carrying G3 bayonets?
As I recall, the only person I know carried a bayonet is Bilal Atu, the same person who was charged for the I can recall.
Is he still around?
No, it's business.
Mr. Hamilton, I wish to now refer you to paragraph 17 of your written statement, where you indicated that Rabbi Washington was very much aware of the centers of authority and power and the usefulness of having intimate relationships with functionaries in those arms of state. Therefore, the relationships developed with leading members of the bar, judiciary, and the police force. Could you indicate, Mr. Hamilton, who were some of these persons who you would have viewed developing this relationship with Rabbi Washington?
As if you look at my statement, continuing on that of paragraph 18, I spoke to some of the persons of note that visited House of Israel headquarters in Rabbi Washington, or Attorney Stanley Moore before, after, and during the period when he was Minister of Home Affairs. I went on to say I can confirm that during the construction of his residence in Meadowbrook Gardens, the guards that guarded his property were from the House of Israel. Also, when he and his family took up residence, members of the House of Israel continued to guard the same property. I went on to say Attorney Stanley Moore was known as Brother Moore at the House of Israel. Another regular visitor, continuing, was Mr. George Jackman, who worked out of the DPP chambers. Justice Barnwell from time to time would visit. In the case of Chief Magistrate Jack Nanda, Rabbi Washington was a regular visitor to his office. There were also senior members of the police force who were regular visitors. The person who visited the most was Detective Warren Gentle of the CIA. He was recognized by the House of Israel as Brother Warren. There were many business persons who would visit from time to time asking Rabbi Washington to intervene on their behalf with the government. I can recall one business family named the Allens who were in the gold mining operation, who had some matter in the court, visiting regularly. Also during the same period, Mrs. Bibi Khan of Record Store fame, who also had a matter in the court, visiting from time to time. There were times when Justice Pomp came to the rabbi to intercede on behalf of Ms. Bibi Khan. Another businessman of note that I remember was Mr. Sokraj, the cinema magnate, who had some tax evasion problems with the then government. I can also recall another businessman by the name of Mr. Lashman Sami. I think he had businesses on Lombard Street, who also had some legal issues and sought rabbi's intervention with the government. There were many others who came daily from all strata of society to seek favors. I can confirm that many times I would have witnessed persons who were seeking favors handing over monies to Rabbi Washington. And also I can confirm that many times I saw Rabbi Washington handing over money to judicial officers and members of the police force. Following on to complete this paragraph 19, I said Rabbi Washington and the House of Israel leadership were jokingly referred to these visitors as children of Nicodemus. And another phrase we used regularly was feed the crows. There were prominent persons who also came regularly to collect food hampers. The person who did not miss a date for her hamper was Miss Agnes Van Corton, who was at the time a Minister of Government. House of Israel had a standing order at that time with the Ministry of Trade to collect a monthly permit so as to uplift quantities of scarce basic food items from government entities, namely Guyana stores and the KSM.
Mr. Hamilton, were you present during any of the meetings between Rabbi Washington and any of the individuals whose name you referred to in those two paragraphs?
Many of the meetings.
Would you at this time give us some details in relation to what would have been said at those meetings?
Mr. Chairman, Let me just interject at this moment, because if, for example, he can speak to general meetings, but if, for example, Stanley Moore's meeting was of a solicitor-client privilege, I'm not sure what the law of privilege is in Guyana, but I know from the jurisdiction where I come from, you don't discuss solicitor-client privilege unless there's an explicit waiver or some waiver of any kind. So I will simply put that before we embark on anything else.
I'm glad you referred to the Rules Council. One of the rules, as you would be aware, is that lawyer-client privilege, even where it exists, does not extend to any discussions or confidences as it relates to illegal acts being contemplated or being done. It relates to giving instructions in relation to matters which have arisen and for which the client is in a problem. But lawyer-client privilege does not extend to a situation where it is an illegality that is being carried out between lawyer and client. That is not to say that I am prejudging what the evidence is to be, but I think when we have this discussion, we should recognize the limits of lawyer-client privilege. Secondly, if the correspondence is carried out in the presence of a third party, there is an assumption that the privilege has been waived, certainly in relation to that third party, particularly if they are not there for the purposes of assisting the lawyer in the course of the confidence. That's how I understand it. And there have been several cases in the Caribbean which have considered this in some detail.
I appreciate your comments, Madam Commissioner.
Given all the advice that has been provided, I think we can now proceed.
Grateful, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hamilton, you recall the last question? If you can give us some details.
Restate the question.
If you can now give us some details of what would have been said at those meetings that you were present.
No, well, I'm not sure. The witness mentioned a tour of these.
I think you just go
I'm
on.
not sure.
Were you present at the meeting between Mr. Washington and Attorney Stanley Moore, who was then Minister of Home Affairs?
I said in my statement, Mr. Moore was known to the House of Israel before he was Minister of Home Affairs, when he was Minister of Home Affairs, and after he was Minister. So there was a consistent relationship with Mr. Moore and Robert Washington in the House of Israel. So there would be, we're talking about 3 periods with the same gentleman. So I would have been at several meetings that Mr. Moore would have had with Rabbi Washington, not just me, other members of the commission.
At these meetings, did the minister then
You're talking about all the minutes, he said there are 3 roles.
I'm speaking in relation to the point when he was Minister of Home Affairs. You were present at meetings when he was Minister of Home Affairs?
Yes.
Yes. Now, during those meetings, could you give us some details in relation to what was said?
As I said in my presentation, Mr. Moore was seen as a brother at the hospital. So many of the discussions would have been of personal nature. I mentioned the fact that Mr. Moore sought House of Israel assistance through Yards property during construction. I mentioned the fact that even after the construction for several years, the guards around the clock at Mr. Moore's resident was members of the House of Israel. So they had discussions that were of personal nature. And there would be discussions where Mr. Moore was being considered as an attorney to represent some member of the House of Israel who might have been in some history report. The reason why I would be there or any other member of the leadership would be there is because after that interaction, some person in the leadership would want to follow up the issues on behalf of the person. So the leader would not be doing that. So that's the reason why the meetings I'm talking about, you would have had that.
May I ask, you have said that these services were rendered to the Minister of Home Affairs, and he then was Mr. Stanley Moore. Was there any what we would call quid pro quo? Did he, in his capacity as minister, render any favors or give any benefits to the House of Israel? I think that would fit more in terms of reference.
Not that I can recall, not that I can specifically say yes to that.
And for these legal services, were payments made, fees paid, so far as?
Yes.
Thank you.
But of course, there were some that were pro bono because of the relationship.
Thank you.
You also mentioned Mr. George Jackman, who worked at the DPP's chambers. Could you first tell us in what capacity you were there? I believe he may have been a senior state counsel.
I recall the period, I know Mr. George Jackman worked out of the DPP chambers. I couldn't tell you what was his position at the time, at the DPP chambers.
At one time he was in fact the DPP.
He was the DPP at the time, I recall, about the trial of Rabbi Washington somewhere in 86. In 1986. But during the period I'm talking about, I could definitively state that he was the director of the DPP chambers.
And you were present at some of those meetings between him and Mr. Washington, Rabbi Washington.
Yes.
Could you indicate at this point in time what was some of the nature of that meeting or the details of what was said during the meeting?
Meetings where, as I said, people of all strata came to Rabbi Washington to interview, and therefore the discussions, as I recall them, would have centered on some matter, some person who Washington is intervening on their behalf, having a matter in the court.
Explaining the
Yes,
nature of the
intervention.
intervention,
Yes.
which was solicited.
Yes.
See that?
Could you at this time tell us what was the nature of the intervention that was being sought?
Okay. In the case of during the time in question, in Guyana, you had, I think Mr. Kwana mentioned, where many basic items, they were contraband, and people still sought to have them procured and brought into them. And therefore, that was a serious charge. So you would have issues of that nature. You would have had issues of persons at the time were debarred from taking over so much money out of business people and so forth. Some sought to breach the law, whatever the law is. And so they would have had issues with seizure of their funds, placed before the court for those issues. You would have had persons who utilized their money to purchase gold and seek to, because at the time you couldn't export gold out of Guyana, at least. I think at the time only the gold board was authorized to export gold out of Guyana. And so some people didn't want to take their chance, business people with, and some other people who had the means, who didn't want to take the chance with taking money. They procured gold that they got. And they were charges, serious charges, for seeking to smuggle gold out of them. So a lot of the issues were of that nature. Of course you had ordinary citizens who might have had issues.
Yes, Mr. Hamilton, these were the natures of the problem, but what we would like to know at this time is how could Rabbi Washington offer assistance to these problems?
Through his contact.
Yes, and
with
through
Mr.
his
Jackson.
contact with Mr. Jackson.
As I said earlier, there was a relationship, established relationship with the ministry, with the government of the day. And there were relationships with ministers of the government. And therefore, Rabbi Washington had the privilege to call any minister to seek to ask them a favor on behalf of any citizen, whether of a judicial matter, I'm talking about the level of government, or whether it was a matter of some other issue to themselves, their families. So because there was a ongoing relationship with them.
And when these calls were made, what would be asked? What is the intervention that would be sought by Rabbi Washington when he spoke to these individuals?
I know intervention where I spoke to the Adams family, trying to recall the matter they had. This is a public matter. They were coming to seek to have the charges that were laid against them. I think for some reminder, I can't recall, but it was a public matter. They said to have him intervene to see whether the charges against them could have been laid aside.
Insofar as the matters were before the court, how could he have helped and how did he help?
Well, again, in that time, and Mr. Quine illustrated the time, when the government official in that time called a member of the judiciary, he had to respond in a most favorable way, or there was a penalty for that. That was the nature of the time, and this is not Hamilton's theory. Persons have written, I thought, on this one.
Sorry, we need to direct contact, not just with ministers, but between Rabbi Washington and a representative from the office of the DPP. But this in relation also to interventions to get to an influence.
Yes, for matters that were in the court.
I'm trying to clarify that. The witness said when the minister calls a judge. Is that what you said, Counsel? In answer to your question, Counsel?
I'm saying and I repeat.
Minister calling members of the judiciary, they have to respond favorably or fair approaches. Are they not an accurate?
Yes, that was the time.
We have to
Respond favorably or suffer. That was the time, and I'm saying
That was the nature of the time.
that is not Hamilton's theory. That was well known. People have written several books and whatever on those issues. So I'm not making up anything. That was the nature of crime. Mr. Quine illustrated. Magistrate Parvatan suffering because he didn't accede to your request to remand Rodney and Rodney.
No, we are now at 11 o'clock. We're running out 2 hours.